All right, let's get some analysis of what we just heard. Wrapping up the week, the first week of this George Zimmerman second-degree murder trial. Martin Savage is joining us right now. You've been covering it, Martin, from the beginning. Give me your quick assessment of what we heard. Was it good or bad for George Zimmerman, what we heard from Lindsay Folgate, the physician assistant?
You know, it's kind of mixed. Certainly the opinions that she was giving were that he suffered injury. But I think what the prosecution was getting at with her is that, well, but was it really life-threatening injury? In other words, that's the claim he's made, self-defense. He thought he was actually going to die at the hands of Trayvon Martin. That's why he had to shoot. And I'm not sure that for the defense, she really painted a picture of a man who was facing that. That said, however, there's the other issue she brought up, the MMA, that he was apparently going to a gym where there was mixed martial arts. That played heavily in earlier testimony. As was already described by Sonny, that, you know, the person who was said to be on top delivering the beating looked like they were using an MMA style. So a very crucial day, key testimony, without a doubt, Wolf.
What did you think, Mark? Mark Nugent is joining us right now, criminal defense attorney, a legal analyst. What did you think of this final day of the week's testimony?
I think it was an exhausting day for everybody involved. I think there was a lot of testimony and people were swaying back and forth. They'd hear something good for the prosecution, they'd hear something good for the defense. I think overall, though, that it was a day that really benefited the defense. Why? Because this is the prosecution's case. They're putting on their best case right now. And the prosecution is presumed to be having better days. And when, in fact, the defense in any trial can chip away at a prosecution's case and show that there's really holes and weaknesses in it, that's not a good thing for the prosecution. This is their case, and this is what they're using to convince the jury that this is their opportunity.
That's a fair point. Diane Diamond is joining us as well, the legal analyst with the Daily Beast. What's your assessment, Diane?
I completely agree. I think that this is the part of the trial where the prosecution is supposed to shine and the defense is supposed to sort of hang their head and wait for their turn. You know, I think this last witness was very important. She talked about the injuries to this man. The prosecution did get in that they weren't life-threatening, but let me ask you this, Wolf. How badly do you have to be hurt before you are allowed under law to start to defend yourself? You know, no, he didn't have dizziness, he didn't lose consciousness, he didn't have blindness in one eye or a slurred speech, but he did have what appeared to her to be a broken nose, to have an occiput damage, which is to the back of your head, sciatica in his lower back. He was obviously hurt in some way during this tussle. So, again, it all comes down to what those 6 jurors think. Their parents, the majority of them, if not all of them. 2 of them have guns in their own home. So it will come down to what do the jurors think was reasonable for him to do if he thought if he thought he needed to have a defense.
That's a point. And Sonny Hostin, you've been watching it from the very beginning as well. And I guess the question comes down to exactly what Diane just said. Were there other ways for him to protect himself from presumably getting beaten up by Trayvon Martin, short of taking out a gun and shooting and killing Trayvon Martin?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to address that. I mean, if you're going to use deadly force, which is what he used, because we know Trayvon Martin is dead, you yourself have to be in fear of great bodily harm or an imminent danger of death. And so that is why the prosecution is going into these injuries. I mean, are they life-threatening injuries? Of course not. He doesn't have a deviated septum. He has perhaps a broken nose that he didn't get treated. He didn't go to see an ENT, and he's got 2 1-inch lacerations on his head and a couple of bumps. He said immediately after, you know, he felt a little dizzy. He didn't feel, actually, I'm sorry, the next day he didn't feel dizzy. He didn't feel nauseous. He didn't feel like someone who almost died, and that's really what you need. And so I think that while today was probably the best day for the defense, because I think that John Good was certainly a consistent witness, this week was not a great week for the defense. And the ultimate issue here is, was he justified in using deadly force? And I don't know that that has testified has given him that.
The pictures, though, Sonny, are pretty dramatic. You see all that blood, you see the bruises, you see, I guess, a picture sometimes speaks 1,000 words, right?
You know, I guess because I was a prosecutor and I've seen a lot of dead bodies and I've seen a lot of really significant injuries, they don't look that significant to me. Ultimately, of course, it's up to the jury to determine what is significant, what means that he was, you know, in danger of grave bodily harm or imminent danger of death. I just don't think those injuries get him there. And that's what the prosecution is trying to hone in on.
Mark, because that frontal picture, when we see all the blood on his face and it looks like his nose is broken, to 6 members of the jury, all women, that could look pretty serious.
It can. And remember the Florida law. The jury instruction that's going to be told to those jurors is, did he have a reasonable belief that he was facing death or bodily harm, serious bodily injury? And so that's a subjective determination. It's not an objective one. So what happened the day after concerning a medical examination, although important, is not the critical consideration. The critical consideration is when, in fact, he maintains that he was being beaten up, did he fear for his life, and did he feel like he could sustain serious bodily injury? And I think that's what the state is going to have a challenging time overcoming.
Week 1 is now over. We're going to continue our analysis, continue our reporting on this and all the day's other news. We'll take a quick break. Much more right here in the Situation Room after this. Week 1 is now over in the George Zimmerman second-degree murder trial. Diane Diamond is still with us from the Daily Beast. Diane, listen to this testimony earlier in the day. I want to assess what we hear.
The voice screaming for help, however many times that you heard it, it was just one person's voice?
When I heard it outside, yes. I believe it was just one person's voice, yes.
And you now believe that that was George Zimmerman's voice, correct?
I never said that.
Do you
I said
believe
it could have been his, but I was not 100% sure.
I'm not asking for 100% certainty. I'm asking you to use your common sense and to tell us if you think that that was George Zimmerman's voice screaming for help, the person on the bottom.
That's just my opinion.
Okay. Nothing further on it.
John Good, a neighbor who says he believes he saw George Zimmerman on the bottom of that fight, Trayvon Martin on the top. Potentially very significant testimony, Diane.
Yeah, I think probably the most significant from the defense's point of view to date. John Good was such a good witness in my estimation because he wasn't for either side. He made some points for Trayvon Martin's side, he made some points for the defense side, and he was very matter-of-fact about it. He wasn't emotional, and he's kind of really the closest thing we have, Wolf, to an eyewitness to the events. Now, he said he didn't see the head being struck upon the sidewalk, but we have proof that something happened because we have those photographs. So what he has to say, Trayvon Martin on the top, the lighter-skinned person on the bottom, pinned down, is really significant.
All right, stand by, Diane. We're going to continue our special coverage.